Hi there and welcome back. Today I'll be showing you how to check the cable inside your HOMELITE grass trimmer to see if it's still good. I had a few requests to do this, so I decided to do one. This is for the HOMELITE SX135 Bandit, but the same principle will apply to many other HOMELITE trimmers. This one here does not have a clutch inside here. When you spin the motor over, the head turns all the time. Now the symptoms of a broken cable are that sometimes the head will turn, sometimes it won't. You're going to hear noise inside the shaft here. Sometimes when you pull the motor over, the head will not spin, and then when it starts it'll spin a bit. When you go to cut grass, it just stops because the cable isn't strong enough or it's broken and cannot spin the head anymore under load. So a good way to make sure if that's the problem, you're going to need to remove the motor from the rest of the trimmer. So start by removing this slotted screw or 5/16 bolt here. It's also a good idea to remove this torque screw here and then remove the throttle cable. It's just going to come off like that. Now just remove the throttle cable, move the lever and pull up the cable like that. So now your throttle cable is not going to be stuck to the motor when you separate it. So now I've loosened this screw here just enough. You don't need to remove it completely. And now simply separate the handle part from the engine. There's your cable right here. You may want to wear gloves doing this because it's very greasy. Now just pull the cable out. The cable is going to be fairly long. Now the cable out of your machine, if it's in good condition, should be approximately 49 inches. This machine's in running condition, so I know that the cable is the proper length. Now if you're having a lot of problems with your trimmer, like hearing noise inside the shaft here and the head not always turning, it could be that this cable is broken somewhere. You also want to make sure that the ends of the cable are square like this, because it locks into the engine over here inside the square part there, as you can see. And the other part of the cable that goes toward the head should be square as well. Sometimes they break down here, and what happens is it stops spinning after a while. Check for excessive loose over here, because if it's worn out, you may have to replace the shaft with the bushing at the end. If parts out without damaging the tube, then that's good. If not, just basically replace the shaft. Now I'm going to reassemble the cable back in. Make sure you put the same ends of the cable back into their original place. This end was toward the head, so I'm going to put it back there. I'm also going to put a bit of general purpose grease on the cable. I'm just going to smother it all the way down before I stick it back into the shaft. Now just stick your cable back in the hole in the center of the shaft. Make sure it's locked into the head. Now when you've got the cable pushed in all the way like that, turn the head and make sure that the cable is turning at the other end. If it turns like this, then you know that all is well in the shaft and the head and the cable. Now if you still had a problem after checking the shaft cable and everything, you may want to take off this cover here on the trimmer to make sure there's nothing wrong inside here. So you need a T25 torque screwdriver. Remove all these screws here. Now you have to flip it over because there's one last screw left right here. Now this whole cover is going to come off. And you'd want to examine this part here, which is where the cable slides into, that it's not stripped or broken. It's very rare that there's a problem over here on the engine. So everything's good here, and if it looks like this and it's tight on the flywheel, then you can put it back together. Also make sure that the flywheel didn't come loose, because this part here has a hex part here on it, and that tightens up the flywheel to the motor. So if this is loose, you could have a problem there. But if it's nice and tight like this, then just stick it back together and your problem is not here. Before I put stuff back together like this, I always put a bit of liquid wrench on the starter paws. It'll make them nice and smooth, and it'll prevent rust. Stick the cover back on. So now stick on these 3 screws. This screw here, wait till we're putting the throttle cable back on. Now flip it over and put the small coarse screw at the back over here, and then you're done. Now just reassemble both parts back together. Make sure you've got this clip on here loose and stick it in here. Tighten it up. Next, install the throttle cable in the same hole. As you can see, it's in the 3rd hole from the bottom. Now you should have 1 torque screw left. Use it to mount the throttle bracket. Now once you're done mounting that, you're completely done. Pull over the motor to make sure that the head is spinning. This one spins because it's got no clutch. So that's all there is to it. Hopefully this video will have helped you troubleshoot your HOMELITE grass trimmer. And keep watching, and we'll see you next time.